He lets her into his home on the worst night of his life, because his daughter needs her. What he doesn't know is that this calm stranger is tied to the scandal that destroyed his career, his marriage, and everything he lost. The question isn't when he'll find out, it's what happens when he realizes she's already inside his heart. Before we dive in, if you're drawn to stories where love collides with power, take a second to subscribe, like and comment where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring more wonderful stories, and trust me, this one is different. Now let's get back to the story. Rain doesn't ask permission. It hammers the glass walls of Michael Evans' penthouse like it's trying to break something open. Inside, everything is pristine marble. Silence. Control. Michael stands near the window in a charcoal suit, tie still knotted, shoulders locked. He hasn't changed since this morning. Not because he's busy. Because if he stops moving through the motions, he'll have to admit the day actually happened. That his daughter had another episode. That he has no idea how to fix it. In the other room, Riley is curled into the corner of a leather sofa, blanket pulled to her chin, eyes open but somewhere else. She's 8. But she doesn't look like a kid anymore. She looks like someone waiting for the next bad thing. Michael's phone buzzes. Another email from the school counselor. Riley remained unresponsive during today's group activity. We're concerned this may require intervention beyond what we can provide. He deletes it. Then the intercom crackles. Mr. Evans, the doorman's voice is careful, like he's delivering bad news disguised as help. There's a woman here from the community program. She says you requested a consultation. Michael didn't request anything. His assistant did. Because when you run a billion-dollar portfolio but can't get your child to speak, someone else makes the calls. He exhales through his nose. Send her up. Andy Miller steps off the elevator with Rain still clinging to her jacket, hair tied back in a loose knot. No makeup, no performance. She doesn't pause to admire the view. Doesn't comment on the art. Doesn't even look at Michael. Her eyes go straight to the sound of shallow breathing from the next room. She walks toward it like she's done this before. Like wealth doesn't intimidate her. Like grief is just grief, no matter the zip code. Michael follows, jaw tight, ready to correct her if she says the wrong thing. But Andy doesn't say anything. Not to him. She kneels slowly next to the sofa, at Riley's eye level, voice soft but steady. Hi, Riley. I'm Andy. If talking feels too heavy right now, we don't have to talk. We can just sit, that we can breathe. You're in charge. Michael's spine stiffens. Because in his world, breathing isn't a strategy. Sitting isn't progress. Silence isn't leadership. But Riley's eyes flicker. Just once. Toward Andy. Not much. But it's the first time in weeks she's looked at anyone on purpose. Michael lets her stay. He doesn't know why it bothers him that this stranger reached his daughter in 30 seconds. He doesn't know Andy's calmness isn't coincidence. It's practice. Born from a life spent managing fallout. And he definitely doesn't know that years ago, Andy made a decision. A good decision, a necessary decision. That destroyed his reputation, fractured his marriage, and set his entire world on fire. Their paths didn't cross by chance. They collided because of a child's nervous system, a man's pride, and a truth neither of them is ready to face. But truth doesn't wait for readiness. It just waits for the right pressure. And the pressure is already building. The call comes during a board meeting. Michael sees the school's number flash across his screen and feels his stomach drop before he even answers. He excuses himself, steps into the hallway, presses the phone to his ear. Mr. Evans, this is Vice Principal Harmon. We need you to come in. It's about Riley. Not again. What happened? She had an episode during assembly. She froze on the stairwell and wouldn't move. We had to cancel the event. Michael closes his eyes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He's there in 12. When he walks into the school office, Riley is sitting in a plastic chair, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the floor. She doesn't look up when he enters. Doesn't acknowledge him at all. The vice principal gestures toward a side office. Michael follows, jaw tight. Angry. But not at Riley. At himself. Mrs. Harmon sits behind her desk, hands folded like she's about to deliver a diagnosis. Mr. Evans, Riley is a sweet child. But these episodes are becoming more frequent. We're concerned that without intervention, we may need to involve outside services. The words land like a threat. Outside services? Social services. Child welfare. It's protocol when a student shows signs of emotional distress we can't manage in a school setting. Michael's voice stays level, but his hands curl into fists at his sides. My daughter isn't being neglected. She's grieving. We understand that. But grief doesn't usually present as complete shutdown. We think Riley may need more support than we or you can provide alone. The suggestion cuts deeper than it should. Because part of him knows she's right. He leaves the office with Riley's hand in his, her fingers limp and cold. She doesn't speak the entire drive home. When people feel judged, they stop asking for help, even when they need it most. By the time they reach the penthouse, Michael has made a decision. He calls Andy. Andy arrives that evening with the same quiet steadiness she brought the first time. No judgment in her eyes. No pity either. Just presence. Michael explains what happened at school. Voice clipped, controlled. Andy listens without interrupting. Then she speaks. What Riley did wasn't misbehavior. It was protection. Michael frowns. Protection from what? From overwhelm. Her nervous system detected a threat, real or perceived, and it shut her down to keep her safe. It's called a freeze response. It's not something she's choosing. It's something her brain is doing for her. So what do I do? Andy glances toward the living room where Riley sits curled on the couch, same spot as always. You help her nervous system learn that she's safe again. Not by forcing her to be brave. By giving her small ways to practice feeling in control. She pulls a folded paper from her bag and sets it on the table. A simple plan, handwritten. 2 sessions per week. 1 microbrave challenge per day. Examples. Choose what to eat for breakfast. Pick a color. Say 1 word out loud. Tiny steps. So small they almost seem pointless. But Andy's tone is firm. Kids don't heal from big speeches. They heal from consistent, safe moments. Michael stares at the paper. Then at Andy. Fine. But I have conditions. Andy waits. No photos. No press. No personal questions about me or my family. This stays private. He expects resistance. An argument. Some kind of pushback. Instead, Andy pulls out a pen and writes his rules down at the bottom of the page. Word for word. Then she signs it. Agreed. Michael blinks. He's not used to people just cooperating. Not without an angle. Not without wanting something. But Andy stands, tucks the paper back into her bag, and walks toward Riley without waiting for permission. She sits on the floor again. Same respectful distance. Same calm energy. Riley, Andy says gently, I brought something. She pulls out a small sketch pad and a set of colored pencils. You don't have to draw anything specific. But if you want to show me what today felt like, you can. Colors. Shapes. Whatever makes sense to you. Riley doesn't move. Not at first. But after a long, silent minute, her hand reaches out. She takes a pencil. Dark blue. And she makes 1 small mark on the page. That's it. 1 line. But Andy smiles like Riley just painted a masterpiece. That's perfect. Thank you for sharing that with me. Michael watches from the doorway, throat tight. Riley hasn't drawn anything in months. Not since the funeral. And now, in less than 5 minutes, Andy has her holding a pencil again. It shouldn't feel like a victory. But it does. The doorbell rings. Michael frowns. He's not expecting anyone. He opens the door to find Diane Byers standing in the hallway, holding a leather-bound photo album and a covered dish. Michael, she says warmly, stepping inside before he can object. I brought dinner. And I thought Riley might like to look through some photos of her mother. She says it like it's a gift. Like she's doing him a favor. Michael hesitates, but Diane is already moving into the living room. Her smile falters just slightly when she sees Andy sitting on the floor with Riley. Oh, I didn't realize you had company. This is Andy, Michael says flatly. She's working with Riley. Diane's expression shifts. Polite. Measured. But her eyes take in everything. Andy's casual clothes. The sketch pad on the floor. The way Riley is leaning slightly toward her. How lovely, Diane says, her tone just warm enough to sound sincere. It's so important for Riley to have support right now. She sets the photo album on the coffee table and opens it without asking. Pictures of Leah. Leah laughing. Leah holding Riley as a baby. Leah at a charity gala with Diane beside her, both dressed like they owned the room. Your mother was so beautiful, sweetheart, Diane says softly, brushing a hand over Riley's hair. Riley goes stiff. Andy notices immediately, but Diane doesn't. Or she pretends not to. I'll leave this here for you, Diane says, closing the album gently. Whenever you're ready. She straightens and looks at Michael. Call me if you need anything. Anytime. Then she glances at Andy once more. A look that's impossible to read. Curious. Cautious. Maybe something else. It was nice to meet you, Diane says. Andy nods. You too. But the air feels different after Diane leaves. Heavier. Later that night, after the session ends and Michael walks Andy to the elevator, Riley appears in the hallway. Her voice is barely a whisper. Andy. Andy stops. Turns. Kneels. Riley's eyes are glassy, her hands twisting the edge of her shirt. Do grown-ups leave on purpose? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Andy's chest tightens. This isn't about sadness. It's about trust. About whether the world is safe. About whether love stays. Sometimes, Andy says carefully, grown-ups leave because they have to. Not because they want to. And sometimes they stay, even when it's hard. But the most important thing is this, Riley. When someone says they'll stay, and they mean it, they keep showing up. Not perfectly, but consistently. Riley's lip trembles. Will you? Andy holds her gaze. Yes. Riley nods. Then she turns and walks back to her room. Michael stands frozen in the hallway. He heard every word. And for the first time since Leah died, he wonders if maybe there's a way forward that doesn't require him to have all the answers. Maybe he just needs to let someone else hold part of the weight. Even if he doesn't understand how they got so steady carrying their own. 3 weeks in, Riley says the word out loud. Scared. One word. Barely a whisper. But Andy's face lights up like Riley just solved a complex equation. That's really brave, Riley. Thank you for telling me. Michael watches from across the room, arms folded, trying not to show how much that single word matters. Progress feels fragile. Like something that could shatter if he celebrates too loudly. Andy pulls out the feelings thermometer again. The same simple chart she's been using since day one. Can you show me where scared lives in your body? Riley's hand moves to her chest. Then her stomach. Andy nods. That makes sense. When our brain feels scared, our body gets tight. Like it's trying to protect us. You're not doing anything wrong. Your body is just trying to keep you safe. Michael makes a mental note. Tight chest. Stomach tension. Signs he's been missing. That night, Riley eats half her dinner without prompting. A small win. Michael lets himself hope. But hope is a setup. The next afternoon, a glass shatters in the kitchen. Just an accident. The housekeeper drops a water glass and it explodes against the tile. The sound is sharp, sudden, violent. Riley freezes mid-step in the hallway. Her whole body locks. Eyes wide. Breath shallow. She doesn't cry. Doesn't run. Just stops. Like someone hit pause on her entire system. Michael moves toward her. Instinct kicking in. Riley, it's okay. It was just a glass. But she doesn't respond. Doesn't blink. He crouches in front of her, panic rising in his own chest now. Riley, look at me. Nothing. Andy appears in the doorway, calm but alert. She doesn't rush. She kneels beside Riley, voice low and steady. Riley, I'm right here. You're safe. The loud sound is over. It surprised your brain, and your body is protecting you. That's okay. She doesn't touch Riley. Doesn't force eye contact. Just breathes. Slowly. Audibly. In. Out. In. Out. After what feels like an eternity, Riley's shoulders drop half an inch. Her breath hitches. Then evens out. Andy keeps breathing with her. You're doing great. There's no rush. 2 minutes later, Riley blinks. Her fingers twitch. She's back. Michael exhales, hands shaking slightly. When the brain perceives danger, logic shuts down first. The body needs proof of safety, not explanations. Later that night, after Riley finally falls asleep, Michael can't. He lies in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. The way Riley just vanished. The way he had no idea what to do. Around 2 a.m., he gets up for water. And that's when he sees her. Riley. Asleep on the floor outside his bedroom door. Curled on her side, clutching a stuffed rabbit she hasn't touched in months. His throat tightens. She's 8 years old. And she's sleeping on the floor because she's afraid to be alone. He doesn't know what to do. Doesn't know if he should wake her. Move her. Say something. So he just stands there. Frozen. Just like she was. His phone buzzes. A text from Andy. If you need anything tonight, I'm awake. He doesn't question how she knew. He just calls. Andy answers on the second ring, voice clear despite the hour. What's wrong? Riley's asleep outside my door. On the floor. I don't know what to do. A pause. Then Andy's voice, gentle but firm. You don't need to do the perfect thing, Michael. You just need to show up. Sit with her. Let her know she's not alone. That's enough. What if I say the wrong thing? Then you repair it tomorrow. Kids don't need perfect parents. They need present ones. Michael ends the call. He grabs a blanket from his bed and lowers himself to the floor beside Riley. Carefully. Quietly. He doesn't wake her. Just sits. Back against the wall. Blanket over both of them. And for the first time in months, he doesn't try to fix anything. He just stays. The next morning, Andy arrives earlier than usual. Michael looks exhausted. Riley is drawing at the kitchen table, calmer than she's been in days. Andy sets her bag down and glances at Michael. Rough night. I slept on the floor. Good. He blinks. Good. You showed her she wasn't alone. That's what she needed. Michael doesn't respond. But something in his chest loosens. Andy moves to the counter and starts making tea without asking. She knows where the mugs are now. Knows he takes his black. Knows Riley likes honey in hers. It's automatic. Comfortable. Too comfortable. Michael leans against the counter, watching her work. How do you do it? He asks quietly. Andy pauses. Teabag halfway to the mug. Do what? Keep functioning. When everything feels like it's falling apart. She sets the tea bag down. Turns to face him. Her expression is honest. Raw. Some days I don't. Some days I barely make it through. But I've learned that functioning doesn't mean feeling fine. It just means doing the next right thing, even when you don't know what comes after. Michael holds her gaze. And for the first time since Leah died, he doesn't feel like he's the only one pretending to be okay. The next right thing, he repeats. That's it. One choice at a time. She hands him a mug. Their fingers brush. Just for a second. Both pull back like the contact burned. But neither looks away. From the table, Riley glances up. And she smiles. Small. Fragile. But real. Then the front door opens. Diane sweeps in without knocking, holding a bakery box and wearing an expression that's too bright, too familiar. Good morning, everyone. I brought croissants. Her eyes land on Andy, then on Michael, then on the 2 mugs of tea sitting side by side on the counter. Her smile doesn't falter, but it changes. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, Michael says evenly. Diane sets the box on the table and crouches beside Riley. How are you, sweetheart? I've been thinking about you. Riley doesn't answer. Diane's smile tightens just a fraction. She straightens and turns to Michael, lowering her voice but not enough. I know Andy's been helpful. But Riley doesn't need strangers, Michael. She needs family. People who knew Leah. People who understand what she's lost. The words are wrapped in concern. But they land like a warning. Andy doesn't react. Just sips her tea. But Michael notices the slight tension in her shoulders. Andy's not a stranger, he says quietly. Diane's eyes flicker. Of course. I just mean long-term. Riley will need consistency. Stability. Not someone who's here temporarily. She's not wrong. But she's not right either. And Michael realizes, standing in his own kitchen, that he doesn't want Andy to be temporary. He doesn't know what he wants her to be. But not that. Diane leaves a few minutes later, her perfume lingering in the air like a claim. Riley goes back to her drawing. Andy rinses the mugs in silence. Michael watches her and wonders how someone who makes tea in his kitchen can feel like both the answer and the question he's too afraid to ask. Because letting someone in means risking the chance they'll leave. And he's not sure either of them can survive another ending. Riley asks the question during breakfast. Can I have the colored pencils? The nice ones. Michael pauses, coffee halfway to his lips. Which ones? The ones in the quiet room. His jaw tightens. The quiet room. That's what Riley calls his study. The room he hasn't opened in weeks. Andy notices his hesitation but doesn't push. Riley's eyes stay on her father, waiting. Hopeful. Michael sets down his mug. I'll get them. He walks down the hall slowly, like he's approaching something dangerous. The study door is closed. Always closed. He unlocks it and steps inside. The air smells stale and used. The room looks exactly how he left it. Mahogany desk, leather chair, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined with awards, framed articles, certificates. Proof of who he used to be. Before everything collapsed. He moves toward the cabinet where Riley's old art supplies are stored, the ones Leah bought her 2 birthdays ago. He pulls the door open, grabs the pencil case, and leaves. But he doesn't close the cabinet all the way. Doesn't notice. Later that afternoon, Riley is drawing at the dining table while Andy sits beside her, watching her sketch a tree with careful, deliberate strokes. I need the sharpener, Riley says quietly. Where is it? Andy asks. In the quiet room. In the cabinet. Andy glances toward the hallway. Michael is on a call in his bedroom, door closed. I'll grab it. Stay here. She walks to the study. The door is still ajar. She pushes it open gently. Steps inside. The room feels like a museum. Sterile. Controlled. Frozen in time. She spots the cabinet across the room. Door slightly open. She crosses to it. Reaches for the sharpener sitting on the top shelf. And that's when she sees it. Papers. Files. Stacked neatly but visible through the gap. Board minutes. Investigation notices. Clipped headlines. Her breath catches. She's not snooping. She's not searching. But she can't unsee what's right in front of her. One headline is paperclipped to a legal document. Evans Foundation initiative under fire after safety failures exposed. Her stomach drops. Another clipping. Whistleblower report triggers federal investigation. Her hands go cold. She knows the story. She knows it because she filed that report. Years ago. When she noticed patterns no one else was willing to name. Risks that were being ignored. People getting hurt in ways that could have been prevented. She didn't know Michael Evans then. Didn't know his name. Didn't know his face. But she knew the foundation. And she knew what needed to be said. Even if it hurt people she'd never met. Andy's vision blurs. She sets the sharpener down carefully. Steps back from the cabinet. Her heart is pounding. This is his wound. The thing that broke him. And she's the one who struck the match. She turns to leave. And nearly collides with Michael. He's standing in the doorway. Silent. Watching her. His expression is unreadable. I was just getting the sharpener, Andy says quickly. Riley asked. Michael's eyes flick to the open cabinet. Then back to her face. He sees it. The recognition. The shock. You saw, he says quietly. It's not a question. Andy swallows. I wasn't trying to. I know. Silence stretches between them. Heavy. Dangerous. Michael steps into the room and closes the door behind him. Not threatening. Just private. He moves to the cabinet and stares at the files like they're evidence of a crime he can't escape. I wasn't just criticized, he says, voice flat. I was dismantled. Publicly. Completely. Andy stays still. Listening. The foundation I built with Leah was supposed to help people. Protect communities. But there were gaps. Oversights. Things I should have caught. He pauses. Things I did catch. And ignored. Because I was too busy. Too stretched. Too afraid of what I'd find if I looked too closely. His hands curl into fists at his sides. Then someone filed a report. Anonymous. Detailed. Impossible to ignore. It triggered investigations. Audits. Headlines. Everything unraveled. Andy's chest tightens. She wants to speak. To explain. But she can't. Not yet. Leah and I fought, Michael continues. Not because she blamed me. Because I blamed myself. And I couldn't let her see how deep the shame went. So I shut her out. Worked longer hours. Stayed later at the office. Convinced myself I could fix it if I just worked hard enough. He exhales slowly. She died thinking I chose the foundation over her. Shame doesn't just wound. It rewrites history, turning presence into abandonment and effort into rejection. Andy's voice is barely a whisper. You didn't choose that, didn't I? He finally looks at her. Really looks at her. Riley's going to grow up. She's going to read those headlines. And she's going to wonder if her father is the kind of man who lets people get hurt because he's too proud to admit he missed something. That's not who you are. How do you know? The question hangs in the air. Andy doesn't have an answer. Not one she can give him. Not yet. Michael turns away, voice quieter now. This is heavy. I know that. If you want to step back, I'll understand. I'll find someone else to work with Riley. It's an exit. Clean. Respectful. No blame. Andy should take it. She knows she should. Because staying means living with a secret that could destroy whatever fragile trust they're building. But then she hears it. Footsteps in the hall. Riley's small voice. Andy. Riley appears in the doorway, holding her drawing. A tree. With 3 birds perched on a branch. I finished, she says softly. Her eyes are bright. Proud. Trusting. Andy looks at Michael. Then at Riley. And makes her choice. I'm not going anywhere, she says. Michael's jaw tightens. Relief flickers across his face. But also something else. Fear. Because letting someone stay means giving them the power to leave later. And he's already lost too much. Andy picks up the sharpener and hands it to Riley. This is beautiful, Riley. Really beautiful. Riley smiles. A real smile. The kind that reaches her eyes. Andy follows her out of the study, heart pounding, hands steady. She chose to stay. But now she carries a weight she can't put down. A truth that could shatter everything. Later that evening, as Andy is leaving, Diane arrives. Perfect timing. As always. She steps off the elevator with a warm smile and a casserole dish. Her eyes land on Andy immediately. Then shift to Michael. Then back to Andy. Something flickers in Diane's expression. Subtle. Sharp. Leaving already? Diane asks pleasantly. Session's over, Andy replies. Diane's gaze lingers on Andy's face. On the tension she's trying to hide. On the tightness around her eyes. Diane has spent a lifetime reading people. And she knows when someone is carrying a secret. Well, don't let me keep you, Diane says, her smile never wavering. Andy nods and steps into the elevator. As the doors close, she sees Diane watching her. Still smiling. But her eyes are cold. Calculating. And Andy realizes with a sinking certainty, Diane knows something shifted tonight. And she's going to find out what. Because people who need control don't just notice cracks. They widen them. Diane arrived unannounced on a Tuesday morning, 2 casserole dishes balanced in her arms like offerings. Michael opened the door still holding Riley's juice cup, the remains of breakfast scattered across the kitchen counter behind him. I was making extras anyway, Diane said, stepping inside before he could respond. You shouldn't have to think about cooking right now. Riley looked up from her blocks, expression unreadable. That's really thoughtful, Michael said, though something in his chest tightened. You didn't have to. Leah would have done the same for me. Diane set the dishes on the counter, her gaze sweeping the kitchen with practiced efficiency. How are you managing? Really? We're finding our rhythm. That's sweet. Diane's smile was warm, her voice gentle. But grief has phases, Michael. Right now you're running on adrenaline. When that wears off, you'll need people who understand what you're going through. Michael felt the statement land like a hand on his shoulder, firm and guiding. I appreciate that, he said carefully. Diane knelt beside Riley. Hi, sweetheart. Remember me? I brought your favorite cookies. Riley's fingers stilled on a wooden block. She didn't look up. She's been a little shy lately, Michael offered. That's normal after loss. Diane straightened, her expression shifting to something more serious. Children need consistency. Routine. People they know won't disappear. The silence that followed felt weighted. I should let you get on with your morning, Diane said, collecting her purse. I'll check in again soon. Don't hesitate to call if you need anything. After she left, Michael found himself staring at the casseroles, unable to name the discomfort settling in his stomach. That night, Riley's nightmares returned. Michael woke to her voice, small and desperate through the monitor. He was halfway down the hall when he saw Andy's door already open, her silhouette visible in Riley's doorway. He paused, watching. Andy sat on the floor beside Riley's bed, not touching her, just present. Her voice was low, steady. You're safe. I'm right here. You don't have to tell me anything. Riley's breathing gradually slowed. Don't open it, she whispered, still asleep. Don't tell. Don't tell. Andy's posture didn't change, but Michael saw her hand tighten against her knee. He waited until Riley settled before stepping into the hallway. Andy met him outside the door, pulling it nearly closed behind her. What does that mean? Michael asked. Don't open what? I don't know yet. Should we wake her? Ask her. No. Andy's voice was firm. A child's nervous system won't give you the whole story until it feels safe. Michael felt his jaw clench against the helplessness. So we just wait? We watch. We listen. We let her know she's protected. Andy's expression softened slightly. Investigation comes after safety. Always. They stood in the dim hallway, the house quiet around them. Come on, Andy said finally. You won't sleep now anyway. The balcony had become their accidental meeting place. Michael didn't remember when that started, only that it felt natural now. The city lights stretched below them, distant and impersonal. Andy handed him the mug of tea she'd made without asking. Diane came by this morning, Michael said. I saw the casseroles. She said Riley needs consistency. People who won't disappear. He paused. She meant you. I know what she meant. Michael studied Andy's profile. She makes it sound reasonable. The best manipulation always does. They drank in silence. I haven't cried since the funeral, Michael said suddenly. The words came without planning, surprising him with their weight. Everyone keeps saying it's healthy to cry, but I just feel nothing. Or everything. I can't tell the difference anymore. Andy didn't rush to fill the quiet. Emotional suppression works, she said finally. Short term. It gets you through the crisis, through the logistics, through the moments when falling apart isn't an option. She turned to look at him. But it costs. Long term, it leaks out as irritability, numbness, insomnia. The body keeps score even when the mind refuses to. So what do I do? Nothing right now. You're in survival mode. That's appropriate. Her voice carried no judgment. Later, when Riley's safe and you have space to breathe, you'll need to let yourself feel it. All of it. Michael felt something crack in his chest, not breaking but shifting. Thank you, he said quietly, for being here. Andy's expression flickered with something he couldn't name. Get some sleep. Tomorrow might be complicated. She was right, though not in the way he expected. Diane returned the next afternoon, her timing impeccable. Andy was out with Riley at the park. Michael was alone when she knocked. I wanted to talk to you privately, Diane said. Her warmth had acquired an edge. I've been thinking about Riley's well-being, and I have some concerns. What kind of concerns? About Andy. Michael felt his defenses rise immediately. She's been incredible with Riley. I'm sure she seems capable. Diane's voice remained gentle, almost sorrowful. But do you really know her, Michael? Her history. She came highly recommended. By whom? Diane let the question sit. I did some research. There were questions about her professional conduct. Ethics violations. The words landed like stones in still water. I don't know what you're talking about, Michael said. I thought you should be aware. Diane's expression was pure concern. When it comes to Riley's safety, we can't be too careful. You understand. After she left, Michael stood at the window, watching her car disappear down the street. The envelope arrived 2 days later. No return address, postmarked locally. Inside, printouts, highlighted passages, fragments of an old ethics complaint. Andy's name, a hospital board review, allegations of boundary violations with a patient family. Michael spread the papers across his desk, his hands unsteady. Across the room, Andy was reading to Riley, her voice steady and calm. She looked up, met his eyes, and went very still. She saw the envelope. Their gazes held across the space between them, and Michael felt the ground shift beneath everything he thought he understood. Andy closed the book carefully and stood. When trust fractures, the moment of choosing which pieces to pick up first determines whether anything can be rebuilt. She walked toward him without hesitation, and Michael had to decide whether to let her close the distance. Andy settled Riley into the playroom with her puzzles before returning to the living room. Michael had moved the papers to the coffee table, arranged in a neat row like evidence at trial. He didn't sit. Neither did she. "I need you to explain this," Michael said. His voice was controlled, each word measured. "All of it." Andy looked at the documents, at her own name repeated across highlighted sections. "What specifically do you want to know? Did you file an ethics complaint against the hospital system I worked for?" "Yes." The single word hung in the air between them. "Did you know that complaint triggered the investigation that ended my career?" Andy's throat tightened. "Not when I filed it. I found out later, when your case became public." Michael's jaw worked silently. "And when you took this job? When you met Riley? You knew then?" "Yes." He turned away, hands gripping the back of a chair. His knuckles went white. "Why did you file it?" The question came out hoarse. Andy forced herself to stay steady. "I saw patterns of harm. A physician who'd had multiple complaints dismissed, protected by seniority and reputation. I reported to the ethics board because the internal system had failed. Repeatedly. And my name got pulled in. The investigation expanded. They audited everyone in leadership." She paused. "You were my target, Michael. But you were in the chain of command that allowed it to continue." "I didn't know." "I believe you." Andy's voice was quiet. "But not knowing doesn't erase the consequences for the patients who were harmed." Michael spun to face her. "So you made a choice. You decided people's careers, their families, their lives were acceptable collateral damage." The words struck like physical blows. "Yes," Andy said. "Ethics decisions often create collateral damage. Right actions can still hurt innocent people. I made a choice that hurt people who didn't deserve it, including you. I stand by the report. I regret the pain it caused." That's a convenient distinction. It's an honest one. Michael laughed, the sound bitter. "And then what? You saw my name in the news, looking for a nanny, and thought this would be good research." "No." Andy's composure finally cracked. "I saw that Riley had lost her mother and needed specialized care. I saw that you were trying to protect her from something you didn't fully understand. I thought I could help. Without telling me the truth. I should have told you during the interview. I didn't." She met his eyes directly. "I told myself I was protecting Riley's continuity of care. But part of it was cowardice. I didn't want to face what I'd cost you." The admission settled between them, raw and undefended. Michael sank into the chair, his hands covering his face. When he spoke again, his voice was different, younger. "She trusts you. Riley trusts you more than she trusts me." "That's not true. You're the one she asks for when she's scared. You're the one who knows what she needs." He looked up, and Andy saw the devastation in his expression. "And now I find out everything good in my life is built on a lie. Riley's healing isn't a lie. How would I know?" His voice rose. "How would I know what's real anymore?" In the playroom, something clattered to the floor. They both froze. Riley stood in the doorway, her face pale. Her hands twisted the hem of her shirt into knots. "Riley, sweetheart," Michael started. She backed away. "If I was better, nobody would fight." The words came out small and certain, a conclusion already reached. Andy moved without thinking, kneeling to Riley's eye level but not approaching. "Riley, listen to me. Adults have disagreements sometimes. That's normal. It's never because of anything you did or didn't do." Riley's eyes filled with tears. "Mommy and the man fought. Then Mommy went away." The room went very still. Michael looked stricken. "Riley, Mommy's accident wasn't because of a fight. But she was upset." Riley's voice trembled. "And now you're upset." And Andy's upset. And it's because I'm bad. No. Andy kept her voice firm and gentle. You are not bad. You have never been bad. When adults have problems, those are adult problems. You are not responsible for fixing them or preventing them. Riley's lower lip quivered. Then why does everybody leave? The question broke something in the room. Andy glanced at Michael. He sat frozen, his face a map of competing agonies. She turned back to Riley. Sometimes adults make mistakes. Sometimes we get scared or confused and we don't handle things well. But none of that is your fault. Do you understand? Riley's tears spilled over. She didn't answer. That night, after Riley finally fell into exhausted sleep, Michael found Andy in her room. Her suitcase was open on the bed, half filled. Her hands shook as she folded a sweater. I think it's best if I go, Michael said quietly. For everyone. Andy stopped moving. You're asking me to leave? I'm not angry. Not really. He leaned against the doorframe, suddenly looking exhausted beyond measure. But I can't do this. I can't look at you every day and not see everything I lost. I can't watch Riley attach more when I don't know what's real. I understand. I'll give you a good reference. Pay through the end of the month. The professionalism felt like a door closing. Andy nodded and resumed packing. Her vision blurred, but she didn't let herself stop. She was folding the last shirt when she heard the small sound behind her. Riley stood in the doorway, bare feet on hardwood, wearing her nightgown. Her stuffed rabbit dangled from one hand. Don't go, Riley whispered. Andy's hands stilled. Sweetheart, your dad thinks it's better if I find a different job. No. Riley's voice was small but absolute. She crossed the room and planted herself between Andy and the suitcase. You promised. I promised to keep you safe. Your dad can do that. He can't. Riley's eyes were wide and terrified. He doesn't know about the bad thing. Michael appeared in the doorway. Riley, what bad thing? Riley's face crumpled. She pressed closer to Andy, caught between loyalty and fear. Andy looked at Michael, then at the child blocking her exit, and felt the weight of impossible choices. Some promises are made with words. Others are written in trust that can't be withdrawn simply because the context changes. She knelt slowly, meeting Riley's eyes. If I stay, I need you to try to tell us about the bad thing. When you're ready. Can you do that? Riley's nod was almost imperceptible. Andy looked up at Michael, still frozen in the doorway, and waited for him to decide which version of protection mattered more. Michael sat in his car outside the counselor's office for 20 minutes before he could make himself go inside. The business card had been in his wallet for 4 months, given to him by Leah's hospice coordinator. He'd looked at it exactly once, then buried it behind his insurance card where he wouldn't have to see the words grief counseling every time he paid for something. Now the letters swam in his vision. He'd called that morning, voice steady, asking if they had any availability. The receptionist's kindness had nearly undone him. We had a cancellation this afternoon, actually. Sometimes these things happen exactly when they're supposed to. Michael didn't believe in timing. But he'd said yes anyway. The waiting room was deliberately calm. Soft lighting, neutral colors, a white noise machine masking conversations from the inner offices. He filled out intake forms with hands that wanted to shake, checking boxes about sleep patterns and emotional regulation, and whether he'd had thoughts of harming himself. No, not that. Just a vast and terrible emptiness where a functional person used to be. Dr. Sarah Chen was younger than he expected, her manner direct without being harsh. Tell me what brought you in today, she said once they'd settled into her office. Michael opened his mouth and found he couldn't speak. She waited. My wife died 6 months ago, he finally managed. And I'm failing our daughter. How are you failing her? The question was gentle, but it cracked something open. I don't know how to comfort her. I don't know what she needs. I hired someone who does, and then I found out she's the person who destroyed my career, and I asked her to leave. But my daughter begged her to stay. The words tumbled out, gaining speed. And now I don't know who to trust or what's real, and I haven't cried once since the funeral, and people keep telling me that's wrong, but I don't know how to fix it. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. That's a lot of weight to carry. I'm supposed to be able to handle it. Says who? Michael stared at her. Who decided you're supposed to manage the death of your wife, the trauma of your child, the upheaval of your career, and your own grief without any support or breaks. Her voice remained calm. Because that's not a reasonable standard. That's not even a survivable one. Something in Michael's chest gave way. I should have seen it coming, he said. At the hospital. The problems that Andy reported. I was in leadership. I saw the complaints. I told myself it wasn't my jurisdiction, that someone else would handle it. His voice dropped. I knew something was wrong, and I did nothing. And you've been punishing yourself ever since. Shouldn't I be punished? Dr. Chen leaned forward slightly. Accountability and self-destruction aren't the same thing. One leads to repair. The other just creates more damage. Michael felt his eyes burn. He blinked hard against it. You don't have to hold it back here, Dr. Chen said quietly. Help is not weakness. Emotional pain needs witnessing. The permission broke him. He cried for the first time since Leah's funeral, great wrenching sobs that came from somewhere he'd locked away months ago. He cried for his wife, for his daughter, for the career he'd lost and the person he'd become in the aftermath. Dr. Chen handed him tissues and said nothing, just bore witness to the collapse. When he finally steadied, emptied and raw, she spoke. This is the beginning, she said. Not the end. Can you come back? Michael nodded, unable to trust his voice. Across the city, Andy sat on her bed with her phone in her hands. The suitcase was still open, though she'd unpacked nothing since Riley's intervention 3 nights ago. Michael had asked her to stay temporarily, his voice careful and distant. Just until they figured out next steps. She existed in limbo, useful but unwanted. The email from Riley's teacher arrived mid-afternoon, forwarded by Michael without comment. I wanted to share something encouraging. Today, during group work, Riley started to feel overwhelmed. Instead of shutting down or acting out, she raised her hand and said, I need a quiet minute. She used the self-regulation technique we discussed. She advocated for herself. I thought you want to know. Andy read it 3 times. Riley had found her voice. In the middle of chaos and adult dysfunction, the child had learned to name her needs. Andy closed her eyes against the sting of tears. Leaving would be easier. Cleaner. She could find another position, rebuild her professional boundaries, stop carrying the weight of Michael's justified anger. But leaving abruptly could confirm every abandonment fear Riley had been fighting. Repair wasn't always clean. Sometimes it required staying in the discomfort. Andy was still sitting there when she heard the knock. She opened the door to find Michael on her threshold, not in the formal entryway but at her private entrance. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face stripped of its usual careful control. Can I come in? He asked. She stepped aside. They stood in her small sitting area, the space suddenly feeling too intimate. I want to see a counselor today, Michael said. First time. Andy waited. I've been blaming you for everything. For the hospital, for Leah, for not knowing how to be what Riley needs. He swallowed hard. But the truth is, I knew something was wrong at the hospital. I saw the warning signs. I told myself it wasn't my problem. Michael, let me finish. His voice was unsteady. You did the right thing. You reported what needed to be reported. And I've been punishing you for it because it's easier than admitting I failed. Andy felt something shift in her chest. I don't know how to do this, Michael continued. I don't know how to grieve and parent and trust someone I have every reason to resent. I don't know how to stop being numb without falling apart completely. He met her eyes. But I don't want to keep living like this. Like a ghost in my own life. The vulnerability in his voice was almost unbearable. What are you asking? Andy said quietly. I'm asking if you'll stay. Not forever. Just until we figure out what Riley needs. He paused. And I'm asking if you can forgive me for making you carry my anger. Andy's hand tightened on the doorknob. The choice sat before her, clear and consequential. She could leave, protect herself, let Michael and Riley find their own path forward. Clean break. Professional boundaries intact. Or she could stay in the mess, in the complicated truth that sometimes the right thing and the hard thing are identical. I'll stay, she said. On one condition. Michael waited. We do this honestly. No more politeness covering resentment. No more pretending we're fine when we're not. She held his gaze. Riley needs adults who can model repair, not perfection. Michael's exhale was shaky with relief. Okay. The word was simple, but the weight it carried transformed everything. They stood in the doorway, neither moving to close the distance or retreat, existing in the fragile space where rebuilding begins. Trust, once broken, doesn't return through grand gestures. It returns through the quiet decision to try again despite every rational reason not to. Andy returned on a Wednesday morning, her bags unpacked but her boundaries clearly drawn. Michael met her in the kitchen while Riley was still sleeping. The conversation was brief, almost formal. No more secrecy, Andy said. If something bothers you, you say it. If I overstep, you tell me immediately. Agreed. And we need to be honest with Riley, in age-appropriate ways. She knows something happened. The silence is worse than the truth. Michael nodded slowly. What do we tell her? That adults sometimes disagree. That we worked it out. That she's safe regardless. Andy paused. And that it's okay for her to have feelings about all of it. Okay. The simplicity of the word carried weight this time. Not surrender, but understanding that presence didn't require control. They heard Riley's footsteps on the stairs. When she appeared in the doorway, her eyes went immediately to Andy, then to Michael, reading the room with the hypervigilance trauma teaches. Andy's staying, Michael said gently. We talked, and we figured some things out. Riley's shoulders dropped half an inch. You're not mad anymore? We're working on it, Andy said. Sometimes adults need time to understand each other better. That's normal. Riley crossed to the table and climbed into her usual chair. Okay. The single word felt like a gift. 3 days later, Diane arrived unannounced. Andy was in the garden with Riley, helping her plant seeds in small pots. They'd been working in comfortable silence when the back gate opened. There you are, Diane called, her smile bright and invasive. I knocked but no one answered. We're around back, Andy said neutrally. She didn't stand. Diane approached, her gaze sweeping over the dirt-stained pots and Riley's concentrated expression. What a sweet activity. Leah used to garden, you know. She had such a gift for making things grow. Riley's hands stilled. I brought lunch, Diane continued, holding up a paper bag. I thought we could eat together. Like we used to. That's kind, Andy said carefully, but we already ate. Diane's smile tightened. I'm sure you can make room. Riley, sweetheart, wouldn't you like to have lunch with me? We can talk about your mother. Riley pressed closer to Andy. Actually, Andy said, standing now, Riley and I are in the middle of a project. Maybe another time with advance notice. The air between them shifted. I don't need to make appointments to see my best friend's daughter. Diane's voice remained pleasant, but something harder moved beneath it. I'm family. Then you'll understand the importance of respecting boundaries. Diane laughed, the sound crystalline and cold. Boundaries. How very professional of you. She turned to Riley. Your mother would want me here, sweetheart. She told me so many times. She said, if anything ever happens to me, make sure Riley remembers who she really is. Riley's face went pale. Andy felt her jaw tighten. I think it's time for you to go. You don't get to decide that. Diane's mask was slipping now. You're the help. I'm the one who knew Leah. I'm the one who understands what she wanted. Stop. The voice was small but absolute. They both turned. Riley stood, fists clenched at her sides, tears streaming down her face. Stop. That's not what Mom said. Diane blinked. Sweetheart, Mom said you made her tired. She said you didn't listen. Riley's voice shook but didn't break. She didn't say that about you being here. You're lying. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Diane's expression cycled through shock, anger, and something that looked like grief. Riley, you don't understand. I think you should leave now. Michael's voice came from the doorway. He'd appeared without either of them noticing, his presence calm but immovable. Diane turned to him, her composure cracking. Michael, she doesn't know what she's saying. The grief has confused her. No, Michael said quietly. I think she knows exactly what she's saying. He crossed to Riley and rested a hand on her shoulder. The gesture was protective, grounding. Diane's eyes flashed. You're going to believe her over me? Over everything Leah and I built together. I'm believing my daughter. Because that stranger poisoned her against me. Diane pointed at Andy, her hand trembling. She shows up, rewrites history, and suddenly I'm the villain? You're rewriting history, Michael said. Speaking for my wife. Telling Riley what Leah would have wanted when Leah isn't here to say it herself. Someone has to preserve her memory. And someone has to let Riley build her own relationship with that memory. Michael's voice remained steady, without being told what to feel or remember. Diane stood very still. So that's it? You're choosing her. She gestured toward Andy. A stranger over loyalty? Michael met her eyes directly. I'm choosing what's healthy. The words landed with quiet finality. Diane's face hardened. You'll regret this. When she leaves, when Riley realizes she's just another person who got paid to care, you'll see I was right. Maybe, Michael said. But that's a risk I'm willing to take. He stepped aside, a clear path to the exit. Diane looked at Riley one more time. The child's expression was closed, protective. Not the wide-eyed adoration Diane remembered. Fine. Diane collected her purse, her movements sharp. But don't call me when it all falls apart. I won't drop in unannounced anymore, Michael said to her, retreating back. But you're welcome to visit with notice if you can respect our boundaries. Diane didn't answer. The gate closed behind her with a metal click. Riley sagged against Michael's side. He knelt, bringing himself to her level. You were very brave, he said softly. She made me feel bad. I know. But I didn't want to hurt her. Michael smoothed her hair back. Setting boundaries isn't the same as being cruel. Sometimes we have to protect ourselves, even if it makes other people sad. Riley's lower lip trembled. Is she going to hate me now? I don't know what she'll feel. But that's not your responsibility. He glanced at Andy, who had quietly moved to give them space. We're responsible for being honest and kind. We're not responsible for controlling how other people react. Riley nodded, not quite convinced but listening. That evening, after Riley was asleep, Michael found Andy on the balcony. Thank you, he said, for not backing down. I wasn't sure I should have pushed that hard. You held a line that needed holding. Michael leaned against the railing. I should have set those boundaries months ago. You were drowning. People don't set boundaries when they're just trying to survive. They stood in comfortable silence, the city humming below. She really did love Leah, Michael said quietly. In her own way. I believe that. But love without boundaries becomes something else. Andy nodded. Boundaries aren't cruelty, they're clarity. In the distance, a siren wailed and faded, life continuing its chaotic forward motion. Michael turned to go inside, then paused. Riley said something true today. Something she remembered, even though it was hard. She did. I think that's the beginning, he said, of whatever comes next. He didn't wait for Andy's response, but the shift between them was palpable. Protection isn't about preventing all pain, it's about creating space where truth can be spoken without annihilation. Michael returned to professional consulting 6 weeks after the confrontation with Diane, but not in the way anyone expected. His first client wasn't a hospital seeking efficiency metrics. It was a community health center asking for help rebuilding trust after a whistleblower complaint had exposed systemic failures. He sat across from their board of directors, a group of exhausted administrators who looked exactly how he'd felt a year ago. I can't promise you a quick fix, Michael said. But I can help you build something better than what you had. The board chair, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, leaned forward. What's your approach? Transparency. Listening sessions with staff and patients. Outside accountability advisors who report directly to the board, not through administration. He paused. And accepting that some people will never trust you again, no matter what you do. The room went quiet. That's not much of a sales pitch, someone muttered. It's an honest one. Michael met each person's eyes in turn. Repair requires action, not image management. If you want theater, hire a PR firm. If you want actual change, it's going to be uncomfortable. They hired him. The work was slower than his previous consulting, less lucrative, far more meaningful. He came home exhausted in a different way, drained but not hollow. Riley noticed the change before he articulated it. You don't look as gray anymore, she said one evening, peering at him across the dinner table. Michael blinked. Gray. Like you were see-through. You look more here now. Andy hid a smile behind her water glass. I feel more here, Michael admitted. It was true in ways that surprised him. The grief hadn't vanished, would never vanish, but it had shifted from a weight that crushed to one he could carry. Andy's transformation was quieter, but no less significant. She'd continued running small, brave steps, expanding the program to include family workshops. Parents learned alongside children, practicing emotional vocabulary, practicing repair after conflict. One Saturday afternoon, Michael watched through the community center's window as Andy led a session. A father was role-playing with his son, practicing how to apologize after losing his temper. The father's voice cracked. "I'm sorry I yelled. I was scared and I handled it badly." The boy, maybe 7, nodded seriously. "It's okay. You're trying." Andy caught Michael's eye through the glass. Something passed between them, an understanding that didn't need words. After the session, they walked to the car together while Riley skipped ahead. "That father," Michael said. "He reminded me of myself 3 months ago. He's doing the work. So am I." Michael glanced at her. "Thanks to you." Andy shook her head. "You're doing it because you chose to." "I just held up a mirror." Still, they drove home in comfortable silence, Riley humming in the back seat. That evening, after Riley was asleep, Michael found Andy in her sitting room. She'd been reading, her legs tucked beneath her, glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when he knocked. "Everything okay? Can I come in?" She set the book aside. "Of course." Michael sat in the chair across from her, suddenly uncertain how to begin. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about what happens next." Andy's expression became carefully neutral. "Okay. Your contract ends in 2 months. I know. I don't want you to leave." The words came out simpler than he'd planned. Not as Riley's nanny. As something more. Andy went very still. "I'm not talking about rushing into anything," Michael continued. "I'm not proposing or declaring some grand romance. I'm just saying that somewhere in the middle of all this mess, you became essential. To Riley. To me." "Michael, let me finish." He leaned forward, hands clasped between his knees. "I don't know what shape this takes. I don't know if we're partners or co-parents or something we don't have a name for yet. But I know I want to figure it out together." Andy's eyes glistened. "That's a lot of uncertainty." "It is. And you're okay with that?" Michael smiled slightly. "I'm learning to be." Andy was quiet for a long moment, her gaze searching his face. "I have conditions," she said finally. "I'd expect nothing less. We move slowly. We stay honest. We protect Riley's stability above everything else." She paused. "And if it doesn't work romantically, we figure out how to still be family. Because that's what we've become." Michael felt something in his chest expand. "Agreed. Then yes." Andy's voice was steady, certain. "I'll stay." The word hung between them, a bridge built from choices and consequences, and the quiet decision to keep trying. Michael stood, crossed the small space, and took her hand. The touch was tentative, new, weighted with everything they'd survived to reach this moment. "Thank you," he said quietly. Andy squeezed his fingers. "For what?" "For not leaving when it would have been easier." "You didn't leave either." They stood like that, hands linked, neither rushing to define what came next. 2 weeks later, the rain returned. Riley stood at the window, watching water streak the glass. She'd been quieter than usual that morning, thoughtful in a way that no longer felt like shutting down. "Do you miss the rain?" Andy asked, settling beside her. Riley considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But it's different now." "How?" "It doesn't feel scary anymore. Just wet." Andy smiled. Riley returned to the table where she'd been drawing, her colored pencils spread in careful arrangement. She'd been working on the same picture for 20 minutes, unusual focus for a child her age. When she finished, she held it up proudly. 3 figures stood beneath a single umbrella. The proportions were wrong, the colors bleeding outside the lines, but the intent was unmistakable. Michael appeared from his office, coffee in hand. He stopped when he saw the drawing. "Is that us?" he asked. Riley nodded. "We're all together, even in the rain." Michael's throat tightened. He glanced at Andy, who was watching Riley with an expression he'd learned to recognize, fierce protectiveness mixed with hope. "Can I hang it in my office?" he asked. Riley beamed. Really? Really? That evening, after Riley went to bed, Michael and Andy ended up on the balcony again. It had become their place, the space where hard conversations happened and small victories were acknowledged. Andy laughed at something, a genuine sound that rang clear in the night air. Michael realized he'd been watching her, cataloging the way her shoulders had relaxed over the past months, the way her smile came easier now. What? Andy asked, catching his gaze. Nothing. Just thinking. About. Michael looked back toward the apartment, where Riley slept peacefully for the first time in months, where their makeshift family had built something fragile and real. That warmth isn't a betrayal, he said quietly. Andy tilted her head, understanding without explanation. It's not, she agreed. It's proof that we survived. The city hummed around them, indifferent and endless. Inside, Riley's drawing hung on the refrigerator, 3 figures sheltering together. Not perfect. Not without scars. But together, and that was enough. Healing doesn't erase what was lost. It builds what comes next from the pieces that remain. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment below for more stories from the Diaries of Love.